And lastly, we have Jibu Elias, who's the content head of India AI. Now, I'd like to... Oh, and the Mozilla Foundation, apologies. So with that, we'll get straight into it, and I'd like to give the floor to Vanessa.
Thanks, colleagues. It's really great to be here today, and very happy to share this news with you about the report. I wanted to kind of just situate this in why we thought that such a report would be a good idea, because this came about 2.5 years ago. And the focus is really about more than just the use of AI in science. We've heard so much about the use of it in agricultural sectors and medicine and many different sectors. But we also wanted to take the time to think about how AI may fundamentally change the way that we do science, how it will change our methods, our ways of interacting with each other and collaborating. And to use this kind of engagement across many different science, technology and innovation systems to anticipate some of the structural barriers that prevent us maybe from making full use of AI in science, but also to look at some of these structural gateways, so places where we can really accelerate the way that, thank you, that science can build off these technology advancements. So that's kind of the big thinking at the International Science Council. We're a non-profit organization with a global mandate. We have about 200, more than 200 member organizations. Some of them are based in country, so they might be national academies of science. Others of our members are discipline specific, but with an international footprint. For example, like the International Union of Pure and Applied Physics and similar. And they go beyond the natural, across natural and social sciences. So we really have a great membership from which we can pull some of these learnings. So this is version 3. Please feel free to scan the QR code or download the full report at the URL given on the link there. So version 3 includes a total of 26 country case studies. Some of these were published, of course, first in 2024. And we may see that, the situation has moved on quite rapidly. The new case studies that we've added in this edition are 8. They're from Egypt, Fiji, Hungary, Kenya, Namibia, Romania, Rwanda, and Singapore. And on stage, Felix has already introduced that we'll hear from 3 of these case studies, from India, from Singapore, and from Kenya. So just to give you a sneak peek what's in the report, this kind of shows the geographical footprint of those country case studies. But in addition to those sort of 5 to 6 page case studies, there was also a comprehensive literature survey that was done in 2023. And that survey pulled up about 45 interesting issues that emerged kind of as critical for the uptake of AI in science systems. And when we had a look at these on writing the 3rd report, and we thought, do we need to update this literature review, we were like, actually many of these 45 issues, the majority of them are not yet solved and are still issues that we're dealing with today. And in addition to that literature survey, there's a synthesis of some of the common learnings that I'll share with you in a minute. But just to give you a flavor, this is not 45 issues, this is maybe 10 on this page. The issues that came out of that initial literature survey were issues around the integrity of science in the conduct of research. How do we manage things like particular tensions around explainability versus black boxes, around reproducibility of scientific results, which is a key cornerstone of how we do science. How do we adjust some of our funding practices? How do we use AI in research allocation, and in the evaluation of researchers for funding? And of course, in terms of data management, how do we balance things like access to data, open data, with an advantage that might be taken using these open data resources that we create as a global public good, but algorithms that are often closed. And of course, things like harmonization of infrastructures and practices. So this is just a flavor of some of those issues that came up. We think that the report will be helpful for decision makers in science policy. We think they'll be useful for those who are drafting policies at country level, looking particularly at some of the science system issues, and taking some good practice from those case studies. And of course, for scientists and scholars who are just getting involved in using AI within their own research, they could also benefit from some of these learnings. So take a pause just to look at what we have learned. So across these 26 country case studies, we tried to pull out what were the common threads and the common gaps. And what the gaps are really are that many countries have some of these national AI strategies, but there's no specific guidance for the science systems in those countries on how to respond or to utilize AI. And so that is an area where either countries have to take, or sometimes it's even left to universities or research institutions to take their own initiatives, or where we can pool our resources to put kind of international level guidance in place. We see that across countries, compute and data center access is uneven, and that is a major stumbling block to utilizing the resources and the software, but also to training the next generation. And there's some interesting results where we see that countries have grouped together to access shared resources across regions to overcome those kinds of barriers. We also see, point number 3, that data stewardship is often overlooked in science systems. Science systems seem to be very much focused on products, patents, papers, but not always placing sufficient value on the important foundational things like data stewardship that is required to use AI to get to those final products. Across almost all the case studies, there was a focus on skills development, skill shortages, workforces needed to sustain R&D, and I think you'll probably hear some of the particular angles on that from our country case study authors. And then also around number 5, which was the evolution of our science funding mechanisms. There was a concern in some of the case studies that we would see mechanisms adapt to fund the next best thing at the expense of some of the foundational humanity studies, social sciences that really are important for understanding us how these technologies will impact on our society. So a kind of a warning bell on overinvestment maybe on science that use AI. And then environmental sustainability was a concern across many of the country case studies, but it was accompanied to a large extent by a lack of knowledge. You know, this is almost never talked about. What do we know about environmental sustainability? So just to show you a quick kind of snapshot of the country case studies, we try to add this visual tool, but it's a lot to assimilate, I think, in a short presentation. But it talks about sort of 4 key strands. There's strategy, infrastructure, the capacity and the skills, and the funding. And the color coding under each of those gives you an idea. If it's dark blue, it's clearly present, relatively mature. If it's light blue, it's coming, it's emerging, there's some thinking happening about it. If it's gray, it may not be there yet, but it's an aspiration for many of those countries. And just a note, please, a caveat here that some of these case studies come from 2024, and we know just how rapidly the field moves in AI. So they're to be taken in that context. And I'll just leave the slide here and hand back to Felix for the rest.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, for setting the stage and presenting the report. We now get to the exciting part of the talk, where we will zoom in on specific countries that were included as case studies in the report. And while we do that, I want the audience to start thinking about questions, because we will have some time for questions at the end, so do get your questions ready. So to start us off, I would like to give the floor to Moses, who authored the Kenyan case study.
Thank you. My name is Moses Dega. Egerton University is found in Nakuru, Kenya. And Kenya is in the news a lot with innovation and technology. But when we take a keener look at the ecosystem, we find interesting perspectives. For one, our research ecosystem is still being reorganized. So round about last year, the government created a state department for research, for science research and innovation. And the objective of that was to bring together 3 key agencies that run the sector. There is one, the National Commission for Science, Technology and Innovation, that does policy, regulation, and just guiding research. We have the Kenya National Innovation Agency that handles innovation. And we have the National Research Fund. So all these now are organized under a State Department for Science, Research and Innovation. Of course, the ecosystem comprises of everybody else, the universities, the research institutions, technical and vocational colleges, and etc. With respect to how the sector does operate, we do have regulation, we do have policies that govern science. However, speaking to the subject of today, which is AI, we have no AI policy in Kenya, in general, even before we get to one that touches on AI, on research. What we have closest is an AI strategy that was launched last year. And in this strategy, there are aspirations to move from what we generally do in Kenya, which is applied research and applied AI, to more foundational research in AI. That's what the strategy aspires to. There are efforts that are started off this year towards a national AI policy. And again, the policy is general, but it does have some, the draft or the work in progress is looking into a bit of research and how to strengthen the research ecosystem. But that is still a work in progress. When you think about the other issues that touch or impact the research ecosystem in Kenya, we have funding. Now, funding in general for research is not optimal in the country. And there isn't any ring-fenced or allocated research funding for AI. It's only last year that the National Research Fund sent out a call for research in AI in cultural heritage. But that again was a one-off. It's not something we are seeing this year. I don't know whether we have it coming in the next year. Sorry. So, with respect to funding, again, there isn't anything consistent from the government side. The bulk of the research funding comes from multinationals and private companies. And we're talking about the large foundations. That would be the Bill and Melinda Gates, there would be Google, there would be Microsoft, who, again, are also orchestrating a bit of a brain drain internally. So they've set up a lot of their research centers. So we have the research centers for Google, Microsoft, IBM within Kenya, and they pull the best from higher education. So the net effect is the talent that we have in AI in higher education tends to be drawn to industry, and a good amount of it also gets drawn outside of the country. So you find a lot of the Kenyans doing any work in research, in AI, either in the multinationals or outside the country. So that looks like how Kenya is. So at the moment, there is a lot of activity, lots of boot camps, lots of hackathons to build capacity. We are beginning to see the rise of a lot of data science and AI, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, some research at PhD level. That is the effort that is currently going on. But when you think about a research ecosystem that is focused towards AI and for AI, we don't yet have that. It's a lot of disjointed effort, a lot of talk, a lot of high-level kind of applications focusing on agriculture and health, but no concerted collection. We don't have compute. That's the other thing. So we have data centers set up by the likes of IBM and etc., you know, but the cost of compute is still way beyond ordinary researchers in Kenya. So we have efforts from one, the Kenya Education Network, which is an association of universities. They are about to launch a GPU cluster this month. It's probably going to be the first educational or research cluster available within the country. Otherwise, most researchers who do any heavy lifting do it from the Center for High Performance Computing in South Africa. So in a nutshell, that's how things look like. No policy as yet, no dedicated funding, no compute, and all the talent either working within but without. So that's how it is like, but lots of energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moses. We'll now go to Kelly, who will tell us about the Singaporean case study.
Thank you very much. It's working, right? Thank you very much. I think it was a pleasure to be part of this study and to be joining here today. I think it's a very important study, in particularly thinking about some of the points Vanessa discussed there, which include, we know AI is reshaping many things and many different sectors, and will no doubt impact science, how we currently collect data, the research, the impact that will have across every other sector as well, as science normally is the foundation for many other things that we see connecting and happening across the world. And so speaking for Singapore, as we saw there, they were very advanced in 3 out of the 4 pillars that you have there, where there's a challenge is in relation to data, to talent shortage. So I'll speak a little bit about human skills, but I think speaking for what we see in terms of strength that comes out of Singapore, a very small economy with relatively small population, but very agile, and has started many years ago on the AI strategy. And that AI strategy started very early with the idea that they saw how AI will reshape many of the processes and priorities for the government, and science being one of them, undoubtedly. They have a strong agenda for building Singapore as a smart city. So they have very much been thinking for many years now how you can move to integrate AI and become embedded across different sectors, and making science a part of that as well. So you have a really great amount of programs and initiatives in place across various different sectors. Particularly for science, we see AI for Science Initiative, which speaks of about 120 million of funding dedicated to just focus on this specific space. You also see a lot of work happening from a few different government agencies that have been put in place to be dedicated to thinking about how to build more of this, as well as more talent shortage as well, so building capabilities to be able to perform well. So you have A-Star, for example, you have AI Singapore, which is not only has a strong agenda in supporting what Singapore can do locally, but it also supports a lot in building partnerships on a regional level. You have, for example, Sea Lion, which has been launched as Singapore's large language model. And the idea was, I think governments are very specific about not having a copy and paste exercise from Silicon Valley when adopting AI locally. And Sea Lion was an example of that. How do we create here a large language model, but we build, use data according to our own values and our own priorities locally, right? This is the same for the whole Southeast Asia, because what you see happening with Sea Lion now is how Singapore is also exercising influence and support over coordination with other countries in the region as it goes about supporting that as well. So there is the role that you see there, what Singapore is for Southeast Asia. Similarly, we also contributed around Fiji, right, for the Pacific Islands. Similarly, what you see Fiji becoming for the Pacific Islands is because they are ahead of the curve in many things, there is a certain leadership level that is involved in how they can also go about supporting other economies, right? In terms of challenge, we see the area of you're still struggling as a small economy with talent shortage, right? And particularly when it comes to issues about detecting explainability in science, biases, how research is being done, how do we protect the future of science well, ensuring that it continues to be independent and as a foundation for what we can rely on going forward, is that you must also prepare humans to work well alongside the technology. And on that front, Singapore is doing a lot of great things. Again, it started very early with a lot of initiatives around upskilling and reskilling people, preparing for the future of work, knowing that a lot of jobs are changing, disappearing, or being completely augmented, right? And so there is that level of preparation. And at the same time, I think what you struggle with is a small population, a small country that has relied in history on a lot of external talent, a lot of foreign talent, and is now, trying to leapfrog in AI and continue to remain at the forefront of it. And so there's a balancing act there. And one of the proposals is that how do you build more around cooperation, particularly for Southeast Asia in that sense, so they can work together on those challenges going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And we'll now go to the third case study, which is India, and we'll give the floor to Jibu to talk to.
Thank you, Felix. So one thing I have noticed, as Moses was also speaking, right? Most countries have AI strategies now. Even smaller countries like Namibia, Mauritius, they have all came up with AI strategies. But what very few have is a research ecosystem ready for AI. That's what missing from all of these AI strategies, right? So, and I want to emphasize that this readiness for research ecosystem is about universities, and how they can access compute data and governance equally as well. So coming to India, India has clear ambitions, like, again, coming to what you said, Moses, more strategies seems to be an aspiration, putting it out there. So we have been having this large scale experiment in public AI infrastructure. That has been the larger message of the summit as well, building DPIs on AI. But one thing specific about India is still a country which is kind of struggling or in the face of capacity building right now. And so coming to the strengths of India, right? The biggest strength of India when it comes to a research and scientific research point of view is its strong DPI tradition. We have the UPI system, the Aadhaar, and many other platforms it has built, which has provided the strong governance support, but as well as a larger use of technology in general, right? Furthermore, there is this growing policy attention towards AI, compute and data set, which is very visible, how the government is shaping its policy and the latest announcements and things like that. And the third most important aspect is the huge talent pipeline India has. Now, if you look at the Stanford AI Index for the last, I don't know, I've been tracking it since 2020, I think. Yeah, because since I was working with India AI back then. India has been there in the top 3, top 5 when it comes to talent penetration and diversity in that talent penetration. These two matrices has been the key core strength of India. And if you also look at that, India has, when it comes to computer science graduates, India has a large number of graduates in the world every year coming through. So, and active public sector interest in AI is another interesting aspect. So these are
Hi everyone,
some
my
of
name
the things I have mentioned in the case study, such as the Bharshini. Bharshini has become a large, a DPI effort from the government. And another thing we have focused is on COEs, right? So back then, in 2024, when we wrote the case study, India has announced 4 AI-related COEs, Center of Excellence, and now we have already have 3 of them already implemented in healthcare, agriculture, and sustainable cities. And another one is announced that will be coming soon on education in IIT Madras as well. But it's not all, roses, I will say, because we are notorious for the budget allocations for R&D in our country. I think when we compare to the countries we are competing with, whether it's China or any other emerging other countries closer to us, we are very even with Singapore. India allocates very little of its overall spending in research and development. But one of the larger challenges when it comes to an AI point of view is the scarcity of compute, right? Especially outside the elite institutes. I mean, we recently procured 14,000 GPUs, and now access to those GPUs are being given through subsidized access is being given by India AI mission. But the larger questions like these GPUs have a lifespan. It's easy to say we procured 14,000 GPUs, but the GPUs, what will you do after 3 years? And furthermore, not every academic institute or research facility is getting the same access. And we have seen that time and time again how the ones which has the name starting with I always get that preferential treatment from the government side when it comes to research. And universities also lack funding. If they have to go their own way to procure this kind of compute capacity or AI experimentation as well. And furthermore is fragmented data sets, right? So we always say India is technically poor but data rich. So why we say that is because of the enormous data our various ministries, various departments hold. But the largest challenge with data is this data hasn't been able to, we have never been able to leverage this data. I mean, there are many use cases, if there is a data.org website, or many states have data websites nowadays. And most of these sites you can see data in skewed PDFs or in formats that can be machine readable. So there is effort by India AI mission, from what I know, to create, provide this data to clean up this data and provide this data to Indian researchers and the startups, right? And finally, it's the faculty capacity. That's a huge gap when it comes to IITs and IIScs. The level of capacity, the level of eligibilities and qualifications, and it can be a real difference. So if India's challenge is not to model innovation, right, about building a research ecosystem of inclusion. So I will also just mention what we have been doing, the Mozilla Foundation has been doing in India for last 3 years, is that we've been running this program called Responsible Computing Challenge, where we partnered with 9 universities, including IIT Guwahati, Indore, Ashoka, Christ, NIT Warangal, one of the oldest universities in India, and a few more. So where we worked with the teams of faculties and the departments, as empowering them to create open AI curriculum, faculty training, and community-driven governance framework. And we have been doing that, and so essentially I think I'm running out of time. So if we invest only in infrastructure, we will get more of AI adoption. But if we invest in people, we will able to build AI capability in large sense. So I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Jibu, and thank you to all of our case study authors. We'll now turn to you, the audience. This is your chance to ask questions or comment on anything that you've heard here today, or if there's more you would like to know about the report, then please feel free to ask your questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Avi Gupta and I am currently pursuing data science degree in bachelor's. My question to you is, how do we bridge the gap between academic AI research in India and real industry development? Like, are there some kind of models that are being used in the world and that are not being used in India?
Yeah, I think this has been a one big challenge we faced when we were setting up, like 2018. This was been a main topic, right? In India, we have this large two problems. You mentioned other countries, right? Like, for example, we speak about Dartmouth workshop as the beginning of AI. It was funded and started by DARPA in US. Where the internet, various major innovations were funded by agency like DARPA, which kind of acted between academia and the military, right? So we, I'm saying not just military, but we don't have anything like that. And we've been notorious for the kind of industry academia collaboration. But that has been changing. Now, if you want good examples, I think Germany is a good example. Like, for example, you take universities like FAU, which works very closely with Siemens in terms of research. So their medical, technology development is very much focused on Siemens' larger vision as well. But we are seeing difference. Like, look at IIT Madras, right, where we have Google has working closely with Professor Ravi's department in building capacities there. We have, I think, Cortex Center in IISc, where they have supported supercomputers and others. So that trend is changing, but we still don't have a larger way to have a closer capacity, right? And a lot of that has to do with how our IT sector is also shaped, right? I'm sorry to say, if any of them working here in the IT industry, we have built essentially, I keep telling, if Chinese spoke English, India would never have an IT sector. Our IT sector is an extractive force. It was never about building technology, it's all about using cheap labor. So when you have that kind of mentality and mindset, it's very difficult to build the kind of, you coming from a computer science background, to build a industry academia ecosystem, right? So, yeah.
Well, not from my case study, but from an experience, you would want to go and check out the Leeds Institute for Data Analytics. I had the opportunity to visit them, and they have a very beautiful model to engage industry. So they offer consultancy to the industry to solve their data-related problems. So they end up doing research on industry challenges, the Leeds Institute for Data Analytics.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, and not that this is a specific example in science, but I think a lot of governments are experimenting with sandboxes or creating ecosystems where they bring different players. So they bring, the academia, they bring industry, civil society, and I'm seeing a lot of initiatives like that from Singapore, as well as a lot of other leading governments, such as the UAE, where I'm based. And those initiatives, I find, where we have seen, I guess, in finance and other sectors, tend to really support bridging those gaps.
Hi, Tuhin. My question is more on the global south. Since you guys have done a lot of work, specific question is: did you found any patterns which might take the global south to more inclusiveness when it comes to using the latest AI technologies, and how any of the patterns? What are the next frontiers that you foresee for the global south that needs to be addressed in the next coming years?
Thank you. Maybe I will start. That is a great question. I think we're privileged to be doing these conversations in India this week and having more representation from this part of the world. I think that it needs to be an intentional investment in how do we bring this part of the world into these conversations on a global level, right? More representation. And that goes across every single sector, right? When we look at the majority of research coming out in AI, you still have the major representation from Western culture, right? When we face a lot of issues now across biases, misrepresentation, that is where we start, right? Unless we actually intentional about including and being inclusive on that global level, it will be really difficult for us to leapfrog into that, right? I'm sure you both have something to add to that.
Yeah, and also taking a look, I think, at the selection of case studies. I think important things are, you know, thanks. That in, I think some of the important things that we've seen is that, for example, in Africa, there's this huge explosion of a young population, and that can really be seen as a, you know, if we get our skills training and things right, that can really be seen as a, you know, big step forward in terms of capacity and skills training. And I think the other thing that I noticed across the set of case studies from the Global South is the importance of data sovereignty for within the Global South. And that's not really, of course, something that seems to come up often in other conversations, but it really seems of fundamental importance. And I'm not sure entirely how to answer your question in it translating to a big step forward, but it's clearly a big priority.
I could add something there. The way out is nations seeking sovereignty, not just territorial, but also technological. So then we begin talking about data sovereignty, hosting compute locally, getting our data to build our models, you know, and building our skill to build our solutions, you know. It's really the only way out. So if we don't have enough nationalism, then we need to build that fast. Yeah, countries that have had no choice have moved. I would say China is one. It's a national pride issue. They have literally a lot of their solutions. India is doing well. I also want to cite examples of economies that, in my opinion, are a bit isolated from the world, like Russia, for example. They've made it in many ways because they have no choice. So we got to have some sense of nationalism, and that will take us to the next level.
Good evening, guys. My name is Karthik. I am a final year student from VIT. I had a question regarding, I have two questions actually. The first one regarding the research currently being done inside India, and I would like to hear the opinions on the other panelists as well. That India is currently doing research on the applications of AI or the foundation models that are already been prepared, or open weights models that have already been created by the Western nations. So how much of a platform right now India and the other countries are at to be able to build their own foundation models, or their own, as Mr. Moses said, to create their own sovereignty in their technological aspect in terms of foundation models? And my second question is, right now, especially in India, there is a flood of Western models in terms of Perplexity, Anthropic, and OpenAI. And how do startups or mid-level companies that drive innovation in terms of these AI research systems can challenge those barriers to entries and make an addressable market for themselves as well? So these are my questions.
Yes. So the first part about research in general, right? See, the thing is, I mean, I don't know if you know, the Sarvam has been doing some phenomenal job in terms of building our own language models. And they've been releasing some of the models in these days and more in the coming days. So that's one thing. But I don't think that, building our own foundation models are gonna solve the larger question regarding the research ecosystem, right? Uh, it's all about access the researchers need and how much of access they get, right? And coming to the big ones like Anthropic or you mentioned Perplexity, which is started by an Indian itself. So it's why they have an advantage, and it's about one aspect I keep noticing is that this dichotomy in our policy, where one side we will say we want a innovation, pro-innovation environment regulation, but then who are we supporting in terms of innovation? For example, I will you look at so for OpenAI and others, India is just a market, nothing more than, and of course they benefit more by getting our data in the other side as well. And while the institutions which are supposed to be the guardians of our research ecosystem and all are entering partnerships with this on organizations. I'm not mentioning any institution's name, when public bodies I'm saying, right? So it's a larger question we should ask to the authorities, larger, the authorities, right? Why there is this dichotomy? If you want to promote, India, like you remember when there was a ban on Twitter, coup rose, and coup was quite good. They were one of the early companies to develop Indic language incorporated. They had been working on NLP back then, even early as back then. But unfortunately, once the Twitter came back again and it gone. So it's about that, the double dichotomy, right? On one hand, we want our companies to work well. On the other hand, we want to give more. For example, I think the previous panel I heard about a senior official from the Andhra Pradesh speaking. If you look at the subsidies these governments has given to Google and Microsoft for starting their data center, it's crazy. You will keep wondering, don't they have that fund? Free electricity, free water, like. So, yeah, that's a question, right? Why this dichotomy? Do you give the same for an Indian company? So, I think that I will stop here. Anyone who has to add? I don't want to get political.
Anything you would like to add, Moses or Kelly, or shall we move on to another question? All right, let's go back to the audience. Yes, gentlemen.
Hi, thank you. Is it on? Yes. Thank you for this panel. I had a question regarding ethics/integrity. So how do we see the scientific publishing, evolving as the AI is becoming more and more day-to-day and more active in, day-to-day scientific research and publishing? So how do we see the publishing landscape evolving in that case?
That's an excellent question, I think, which we should be discussing more about. So one thing I have seen, I'm an editor with editorial board member with Springer on AI and Ethics Journal. So you see the number of, I think I was in one of the meetings, and you see this high spike in the number of submissions you are getting since ChatGPT came out. And interestingly, I also receive a lot of papers from students and people saying, hey, I wrote this paper, can you check? Completely machine generated. There are cases where they forgot to remove, if you want a shorter, crisper version, I can provide that as well. I'm not joking, that's the kind of, I'm not disrespecting my country, but there are faculty members unfortunately in country who doesn't even remove that, right? It's a sad reality. So what Springer has done right now is they have a very clear terms, like you can use AI. So if you come and say, don't use AI, of course, then what's the point of standing as research, right? But you look at the positive side. So because I am somebody who struggled with grammar and all those things, but AI has helped me there. So if you're using AI to polish your language, if you're AI to make those kind of changes, it's acceptable. You can mention that. But if it's using just to generate it and copy paste it, in many cases we have seen the cases of hallucination, right? And interestingly, there is a paper recently published on how to define AGI. And that paper had references which were hallucinated. So this is the kind of world we are living. So That's one way. And when we are doing Mozilla Foundation, when we are inviting application, we ask clearly, have you used AI models? If so, okay, for what? Right? And now there are some cases where if it's okay to use, but you have to share prompts as well. So, but I think it's okay to use as long as it's a human work with a support of AI. I mean, like, even if you look at Grammarly these days, it's very much AI, LLM based on. So I think, I will leave it to my fellow panelists.
Yeah, that's great. There's something called cognitive debt, and it's this term that basically summarizes what Jibu is telling us, which is this ability that we're losing to really, I think, analyze and that human capacity that we have, rationalize activities and tasks, right? Because we are now automating them all to AI, and so it will certainly reshape how research is done, how science is done, how every single task that we're currently performing here, it will change more and more and more. How do we prepare for that is, again, we go back to, I think, in every single case here, we touch on human capacity, right? So it's the ability of, unless we really prepare, surprisingly, most people don't even know that AI can hallucinate. You have had lawyers showing up in court with completely made up cases in front of a judge, and not even, I think double checking and analyzing and acknowledging that. So that is part of human capacity, right? Being able to detect where the information came from, where are the sources, how do we analyze this, but most importantly, how are we building the skills that we have that are going to be more important, which are those soft skills, right? Creativity or testing or and questioning. Most importantly, the responses and the outputs that we're receiving from AI. That starts with education, even with the way children are currently being prepared inside schools and universities, right?
Just a quick one. AI is, in all cases, is a double-edged sword. That's what you're saying. It has clear advantages, and I love it, I use it. But it has its clear disadvantages. And one of the dangers, let me throw in another big word there, that is leading to is cognitive atrophy. The more we use it, our brains begin to atrophy, just like muscle. And once we become alive to that fact, then we'll be afraid of AI and what it's doing to us. It's always refreshing to come across a piece of writing that is human these days. They say shortly, if we don't deal with AI, we'll end up having the same kind of poems and the same kind of creativity, because AI cannot learn beyond what we've given it. So with time, just repeats. What is that doing to the research ecosystem? I think that's the main question. It's currently a bigger danger than it is a benefit. The pressure to publish is not doing as well, and people have found a way out. And AI is like a breath of fresh air to them. So we probably need to ease on the pressure to publish and probably go, was it the China way? Practice PhDs, yeah? Where it's not about what you publish, but what you produce. And with time, there'll be no pressure to publish. And I'd encourage all of us, let's use it as much as possible, because that's the only way you know it is AI. I can pick a piece of writing and look at it. From all the telltale signs of the formatting, the language, I'll tell you this is AI. Why? Because I use it. So with time, we will need to be also the integrity checkers in ourselves. But it is more of a danger right now, but it's because of the pressure to publish. That needs to calm down a bit.
We're almost we're at time, so we have probably time for one more quick question. Yes?
Yeah. It's not about a question, it's about an opinionating of everyone, because it's a rare scenario to get many other countries in one place. Because the AI will obviously erasing the border of nations and countries also, because it's enable everything to access everything as quick as possible. The same way quantum and AI get together will take to the next stage of human, especially like this kind of a scenarios. What it leads to? Is it a human-enabled AI or AI-enabled human? Researchers may go fast as possible. Also, we should retain our own things also. Like we mentioned the previous sessions, the last decades usually the lowest IQ in our humanity were found. So where it goes and where it moves to the next generation, I'm expecting your opinions.
Any thoughts from our panelists on that rather philosophical question?
It's going to get worse if we don't take action. Yeah. The level of intelligence I just mentioned will keep dipping and dipping, and AI will suddenly not become better but become worse because the source is becoming worse. So, yes, it will all collapse. AI depends on us, and we are getting less intelligent, so it gets less intelligent. With time, I don't know what will be left of both of us. So, but AI can be a very, very instrumental addition to our research ecosystems, properly understood and utilized. Thank you.
Well, let's end it there. Please, round of applause to the panel. And thank you very much for joining us here today.